Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Monday. Lots of hockey to talk about. Lots of great games this weekend. But first, Russ with something to say.
So quick pre-show here. Let's the Philadelphia Phillies made an announcement today that I found funny. The first one is, I think it's funny that any baseball fan might consider buying tickets right now with no CBA. I would wait. That's a pro tip. I would wait.
Yeah.
But if you do buy tickets, some of their games now have a 6:45 start, and I'm thinking so. And this is probably going to happen in Major League Baseball too. So at some point, but I'm thinking, so Major League Baseball's answer to abnormally long games is to start them earlier.
Right.
Like they just won't identify the problem. Like it's just crazy to me.
Yeah. They need to start them earlier. It's like I've heard a lot of people complain about that.
No, but if you start them earlier, it's still going to be a 4-hour game, Mac.
Yeah.
If they just don't make them, if they actually did a few things, which they're refusing to do, like get guys to stop stepping out of the box, you wouldn't have a 4-hour game.
No, not at all. It would be a lot better. I mean,
yeah, everything. Hey, Kev, everything they've tried to do in terms of like, except for the, I've seen the pitch clock at the AAA level, and it really they don't really adhere to it, but it's it still seems to speed up things a little bit.
Just I'm telling you, you give a guy one step out per at bat, you would kill a half hour off that game. But Kev, what I was saying is the Phillies have decided that they'll start some games at 6:45. So it looks like Major League Baseball's answer to 4-hour games is just to start them earlier and not fix the problem.
Yeah, no, I know. It's amazing this and it's all really just a relaxation, mental preparedness that causes this. They got to reset the mechanism and get back in and check their gloves and.
Well, it's gotten to the point, Kev, where every batter is Nomar Garciaparra. They're all like doing the adjusting and the hat and this. And
that. I mean, but it's all different because it's all just to set, the tone for, to get ready to play. I mean, they just got to cut that down.
Well, okay, and this is the part that infuriates me the most because you've got the pitcher staring in. He's gotten the sign. He looks at the batter. He's waiting for the batter to step out because he wants to frustrate the batter. And he thinks he's got some sort of a little bit of an advantage there. And the batter is waiting for the pitcher to pitch. And there's a staring contest, and it's 10, 15 seconds. And the umpire is not doing anything. He doesn't call the play or anything like that. He's just waiting for them to decide. And then one guy steps out or one guy steps off the mound. It's like, okay, at a certain point, maybe you allow that once, but what the umpire has to do, the umpire has to have the power to call a ball or a strike as a penalty.
Yes, I agree that. All I would do though is say when the pitcher throws the pitch, whether you're ready or not.
Yes,
it comes. That's the way that I would deal with it. The pitcher goes in the set, and if the batter's not ready, well, that's your problem. You've had. Because it takes the pitcher a lot longer to get ready than a batter, in theory. So because he has to go through a wind-up, he's got to check if there's someone on base. So my always thought has been, if he throws it, you call it, whether the guy's standing in the box or not.
Right, because we've seen pitchers get hurt. Like they're starting on their wind-up, and then the umpire calls at the 11th hour, and he tries to hold up. And I've seen pitchers hurt their arm that way.
Yeah, and you don't want the umpire to have to be in a position where they got to arbitrate, how much time's going to be, every pitch, So I would just say, it's all on the pitcher when he throws the pitch, and if the pitcher takes too long, then you can call a ball.
Now, I just to mention this quickly. And not to go into everything with the whole Aaron Rodgers thing because it's a football, it's a for a pun, it's a political football. But we now know, at least I don't even think we actually know how another sport is going to react to a player like Evander Kane with the NHL. They suspended him 21 games, and I'm going to bring up something about Kane when we start the show. They suspended him 21 games. They haven't suspended Rodgers. All they've done is he's out until he's COVID negative, but they haven't done anything with him yet.
And to go one step further, if you really want to talk about how he should be suspended, even if you talk nothing about that, apparently he went to some Halloween party, and if he was unvaccinated, there's rules about that in the NFL, and nothing has been talked about with that.
Right. Well, yeah.
I have felt all along, and with no fact mixed into this, like I don't know anything, but I sensed that the Evander Kane penalty was something for
it was a coverall.
Yeah, for sure. That this was a way for them, because they couldn't find a way really to suspend him for his conduct unbecoming.
Yeah.
So they just hung him for this.
I said to Russ off air, I said this was the O.J. Simpson of
yeah, I didn't want to go there, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean they couldn't get him for murder. They got him on the civil, but then they got him for armed robbery. So they got him in jail.
Right, and they got him for the sort of the maximum on the
I agree. And this Aaron Rodgers thing is awful to me. Like the fact that it just shows that, a star is a star is a star. Like sometimes it's like, he's obviously a star. You don't want to, I don't know. And I'm not even, I follow football so routinely. I mean, I watch it when it's on, but it's like just to know that, he did what he did, obviously totally deceiving everyone, lying to everybody, and him being such a team guy, just the whole thing is just so brutal. And I know we don't have to get into it, but NFL needs to do something beyond, make them show that they're bigger than their stars, or else their stars are just bigger than them. And if they're admitting then if they're the NFL is bigger than its stars. The NFL is huge. They are bigger than their stars, and they can get away. They can they can punish their stars. They don't have to be afraid of their stars. If anything, the NHL is afraid of their stars, but the NFL isn't. The NFL is huge, and I don't know. It's really pathetic to me.
You just brought up something interesting, and I've always wanted to kind of talk about this to get everyone's thoughts on it. But I've always thought it's a very low percentage of people who are one sport fans.
Yeah.
I think mostly people are multiple sport fans. They watch a lot of different things. However, I've always made the observation that if you are going to be a one sport fan, it's usually hockey.
It's usually hockey. It is. Hockey is the sport and I think I completely agree with you. And for years, I mean, I did something in college on this. When I was interning at the Inquirer with Al Morganti way back in the day. I never actually even met him. I interned with him. It was funny. I was interned in his group, but I never met him at that point. But I did something on, what's everybody's favorite sport, and hockey, came along with that. Hockey was either number one or it wasn't on the map.
Right.
And I think that's how it works. Hockey. There's the casual hockey fans, and that's the other side of that game. Is like there's no casual hockey fans. And I think that's the downside of that. But if you are a hockey fan, you're a hockey fan through and through.
Yeah. Also, I find too that hockey fans are one team fans.
Yes.
They're
I think
not.
that has changed.
I don't think so. It doesn't feel like it. Like I'll tell you what, the television ratings don't reflect that. I mean,
you're right. I mean, even for fantasy hockey, I'm in a league with a lot of guys from the West Coast, and a lot of them are Canadian, and they're all Canucks fans. They may have players in other teams, but they're really just watching the Canucks, and I can tell by their conversations, and that really does seem to hold true.
I mean, maybe I'm biased on this, but here's the situation that I find, because of who I write for, because I write for hockey, because I write hockey rumors and not cover one particular team. There are hockey rumor fans, which are not necessarily fans of a team. These are fans of transactions.
Hot stove fans.
Yeah, these are fans of things. So those are not just fans of one team in my mind. And I see a lot of them. I mean, I see a ton of them, and we see them like the guys in our chat room here. We know a lot of these guys are fans of one team, but they're also really up on a lot of teams. And I think that, there are definitely these hardcore hockey people who are fans of the sport in general and will watch anything.
We watch anything, but it's a very low percentage, I think. I think Kevin's right.
You just don't see them. Yeah, usually, like most of my friends, I mean, it isn't that they watch every sport, but there's multiple. You're you're always football, baseball, and hockey. Basketball has a huge following, but not everybody's a basketball fan.
Yeah, if you're a hockey fan, you're usually not a basketball fan because the seasons conflict. I mean, you could be watching the Leafs the same night the Raptors play, and you only watch one game unless you got two screens and balls looking, different.
I'm sure a lot of Raptors fans are Leaf fans. I mean, that's like
no, but I'm saying if the schedules conflict,
they definitely conflict. There's no question about it. But
the guys that I really enjoy though, and I've run into a lot more of them as I've gotten older. That some people's allegiances have nothing to do where they grew up.
Yeah, I like that.
Like my boss at USA Today grew up in New Jersey, but he is a Rams fan and has always been a Rams fan. And
there was somebody he liked on the Rams.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Boston Celtics fan because of Larry Bird, because when Larry Bird was drafted by the Celtics and they were on CBS, and I mean, I just loved the way he played, and I became a Celtic fan. So, and I mean, I'm a Bills fan because I'm from Buffalo, but after the way they played on Sunday, I may not be a Bills fan.
Well, I mean, Eck is a Preds fan because of Carter Hutton. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a Larry Bird story, and it's a bad one, and I'm glad that I've sort of changed as I've gotten older, because I hate to be that guy that I was. But the Larry Bird, when he was at Indiana State, I was covering college basketball.
Okay.
And I had tried to set up an interview with him when he was coming in to play Eastern Michigan University. And he just wouldn't do it, and it turned out to be just a pain in the butt. And they said, well, you can get him after the game, but he wasn't very cooperative. And it just colored my thinking on him for a very, very long time. That, here he was, like, I mean, he was a top player, and, he had been on magazine covers by then. But, it wasn't like there were 33 people trying to get an interview with him when he came into Ypsilanti, Michigan. So
that's amazing. And, and I remember you telling me, like, it can work both ways, right? Like, you can become a fan of a particular player.
Because they were helpful.
Yeah, I remember you telling me your Ed Belfour stories, which were really like something, like, like the way the length he went to help, but interviews and stuff like that. They, share that. That's a really good story. People would like that, I think.
The what's the one? The Ed Belfour and the
the Ed Belfour. Just like, I remember you saying he was waiting in the locker room for you, or there was some. I remember some.
Well, no, it was just a bizarre tale where I had to wait for him, and it's one of the strangest stories that I've ever come across.
I love this.
So we set up this interview, and I always try to come up with something that maybe they'd want to talk about. And I had talked to some people around the league who knew Ed and said, he's really into muscle cars. And I said, I had a 68 Pontiac Tempest with a 350. And I thought, when I was in high school, and I thought, well, maybe he'll want to talk about that. And he had his cars in a garage in Saginaw, Michigan. And of course, I lived in Michigan. And, he was playing for Chicago. So I used all that. And he did want to talk about muscle cars, and he wanted to talk about how he got interested. So we set this interview up. But I went to see him, and he said, I need a few minutes. And so I waited. And he came out and he said, I need a few more minutes. And I waited some more. Mm-hmm. And then, he came out and said, I need some more minutes. And now everybody had left. And it's like, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm sitting in the dressing room waiting for him. And then I wandered out. I don't remember why I wandered out. And I came back in, and here he was doing his stretching in the nude in the middle of the dressing room. And it's like this Zen Lotus position. And he's honestly, it seemed like he was in a trance. I mean, that's how it felt to me. Now that's clearly probably not the case. Probably wasn't in a trance, but that's how it seemed. Right. So I didn't quite know what to do. I'm standing here, he's doing this thing. So finally I thought, you know what? I'm going to clear the mechanism. I'm going to walk out of the dressing room, and then I'm going to wait 10 minutes, and I'm going to come back in. And when I came back in, he was dressed. He had finished, whatever he was doing in the yoga positions. And then we sat down and talked about muscle cars, and it was a terrific interview. A terrific interview.
And Kev, I have to say, other than the scene from My Cousin Vinny, that's the first time I've heard the Pontiac Tempest mentioned.
Yeah. So the thing, what the amazing part of that story is I would pull up to lights, and I'm the least. I've always said that, the story about when I went up and interviewed Jordan Tutu, and I ended up going seal hunting with Jordan.
I love that too.
And at the end, I ended up rooting against the seals, which is
yeah,
really out of character.
Yeah.
I thought the seals were taunting us. I really. but anyway,
yeah.
Other than that, I always say I'm the least likely guy to go seal hunting. That I'm also the least likely guy to race cars, and so I would come up to the light with this 350 Pontiac Tempest that I only bought because it was really a clean car. Okay, it was just a clean car. And I had this, something about it. It looked sort of newish, even though it was the 1970s. So I buy this, but I would pull up the light, and these guys would just drive up and they rev up their engines.
Yeah, they want you to
go. They wanted to go, and I didn't want to go. I just wanted to, creep off the line. So,
well, they used to do that with my Pinto.
Well, you were the least likely guy to drive a Humvee.
I know that was. I remember when the
That's
first time
true.
I ever drove Kevin anywhere was in New York City at an NHL event.
Oh, it was hilarious.
I pull up in my my H3 Hummer, orange, bright orange, with black leather interiors. Like, this is not what I would expect you in. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that thing a few times.
Well, he's bearing the lead on the story
Go ahead.
because he ended up with the Humvee when he started out looking for a Prism.
That's right.
He's going out to buy
good for the environment.
So socially conscious car, and he ends up not getting that car because he thought it was a little too early to buy those cars, and he ends up buying the exact opposite.
Well, I've got a quick story about Eck and his Humvee because I went.
I know where you're going to go. I know where you're going to go with this guy.
I went to Philadelphia for the trade deadline. We did a trade deadline show at Eck's house.
Yeah.
Afterward, he got me into the Philadelphia press box for a game against the Canadians, and it was a particularly windy day. And we pulled into the parking lot at Wells Fargo, and Eck had opened up the door, and for some reason he had a wad of $20 bills, and all of a sudden the wind swept in and swept out the money, and Eck and I and whoever the other person was in the car were running after the cash as it's swirling around the parking lot.
Julie Robenheimer, actually.
Julie Robenheimer, that's right.
And no, that was I thought you were going to talk about around in the Jeep when it snowed. But anyway.
No.
Yeah, that Humvee was Flyers colors, as I recall.
It was. It was such a. It wasn't the biggest Hummer. It was
Yeah, it was a mid-size Hummer.
But it was beautiful. Oh my gosh! And it was just I did not intend to buy it. And someone when I was looking for this other car, someone was like, "I got this car for $2,500. It's in great shape. No one wants to buy it because of the gas mileage or whatever." And I'm like, I looked at it. I'm like, "That's a beautiful freaking car." I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna do it. I know I was doing the other way. My next car will be electric. I swear." Yeah. All right, let's go.
Yes.
Here we go. That was a good story. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, November 8th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and nobody is going to challenge me to a drag race in a Honda HRV.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen from Hockey Buzz, and we just did a tutorial on how to kill 20 minutes of a podcast.
We totally did. And I'm Macklin. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where we get together and force you to listen to us just talking to each other. There you have it. So I want to start. I have a place I want to start today. And then go ahead, Mike. I know you got something too. But,
I want to start with this because it's old news, but the news, the story of it is sort of continuing. Jeremy Colleton got fired over the weekend. We all basically thought that was going to happen. I mean, it made perfect sense. Yeah. The organization, the Blackhawks, is in turmoil right now, obviously, because of the whole Kyle Beach situation.
Very few coaches. I always say the saying is that coaches are hired to be fired. It felt more like Jeremy was that way than any other coach I've ever.
Yeah. But there's almost like a protocol now for that. Right. Like yesterday whenever it was, I was reading the text that you guys were all sending, and I'm thinking, Jeremy's he's in coach firing protocol.
Yeah.
We were just following the sequence, and if they had lost one more game, which they did, then he was done.
Can we at least use the term fired, though? I'm so tired of we've relieved him of his duties. Like, the guy was fired. Every coach gets fired. Can we just use that term?
Nice, you know?
But what the point I was going to bring up was, I mean, we're 10 games into the season, and I'm not casting aspersions on Derek King. He's been a coach at the American Hockey League level, but they have an interim GM, and now the interim coach is going to be the coach for the rest of the year. They have Mark Crawford there as an assistant coach, but I mean, are they throwing away their season after 10 games?
I don't think so. I think that's why they got an interim coach.
Yeah, I think the idea is not to, but you're right, Mike, in terms of like, you know, they're not just going out there and saying and doing like going after an exhaustive search. I mean, when you announce, it is weird to announce your interim coach is the coach for the rest of your season when you have 70 games to go.
Right.
That to me is a strange.
Yeah, but that's because they're going to hire a general manager.
Right.
I mean, they're in the midst of a exhaustive search for a GM, and I'm sure that the Wirtz has said, you know, well, let's just let him hire the coach because you don't want to give that GM a free coach hire because that's what he'd have if you.
I mean, they're a franchise in transition. That's what they are.
Very high on Davidson. You know, like it's been interesting when I talk to him. Like, you know, I hear good things about him, right? Like
now one thing I heard from my friend Jeff Merrick on his show in Toronto that, you know, there is going to be more than likely a complete reset of the organization, that they probably going to clean out a number of people in the hierarchy. You know, it may extend to the players. I mean, we know that Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane have a year left in their contracts.
They should trade them. They should.
Right, but that's not guaranteed, and you know they're.
It's up to them too. It's up to those guys.
But the one thing that he had mentioned that I would be completely against is a change of the logo. I mean, how many times do we have to go down this road of the, you know, of the Black Hawk? That is not a racist logo.
I don't think it is either. And I thought about this. Obviously, we thought about it a lot because of what's happened, you know, when in Atlanta and all these different places, right? But
I'll say it like this. I read up on it and it didn't seem like it to me.
Yeah.
But we're not the people who should be making that decision. It's really up to like the nation, the 7 nations people and those people to make that decision. It's not really up to 4 white guys.
But I thought that they have said, because that's what happened.
Maybe that was years ago. I don't know.
No, it's been recent because this keeps coming.
How recent? But how recent?
In the last couple of years, this keeps coming up, and they're saying,
well, if it keeps coming up, then they have.
Yeah, but it's not being brought up by them.
It's being brought up by
the 4 white guys.
By the 4 white guys,
okay.
exactly.
Well, then it shouldn't happen.
And because I don't think I mean, that logo, by the way, is used in for a lot of teams.
Yeah, but all right, but that doesn't mean it's good. Like when they're using it for, you know, in North Dakota, the Fighting Sioux.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's not a good use of it. But
I don't know. We ended up having that in my alma mater. You know, we were the Hurons. And they actually had a member of the Huron tribe. I don't know if he was the top leader, but you know, when this was all coming down, he said, you know, we feel honored that you're honoring our tribe. Like there was no, you know, the name Hurons. There weren't, you know, Huron River. That name of, you know, came from the
Lake Huron.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty good.
I can tell you that
if your organization
they changed, but they ended up changing it anyway. You know what I mean? They just, you know, went with the Eagles.
No, but what Kevin just said makes sense because in my neighborhood where I grew up, it was North Massapequa, so it was settled by Indians, and there was a sign in town. I think it was near the train station, actually explaining it, and I think that's good. I mean, and that's why I think that they kept that name all these years.
Yeah, the Chippewas are Central Michigan, and it's the same sort of deal.
Right, the Cheektowaga, isn't that an Indian thing up there?
Yeah. Where the Iroquois nation was prominent, and you know, I mean, a lot of towns around here are named after either Indian American Indian or Native American individuals or tribes or whatever. And you know, it's like like I said, I'm a white guy, so I can't. I'm not the one to make the decision. But to me, it's like because you call yourself. I mean, it's one thing if it's Chief Wahoo and he's got the big grin, and that's insulting. But the honestly, the Blackhawks emblem, other than like my favorite non-Toronto jersey growing up was the red.
No, I mean they're
Blackhawks jersey. It's fantastic.
Mine too.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and I think it does nothing. I think it's just
It'll be up to the Wirtzes. I doubt it's going to change.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Well, they didn't they send out a memo to that effect?
They did.
I didn't see it. Okay,
but they did. But believe me, everything is subject to change once something else happens. It's like they're in damage control right now, so maybe they don't want to be offensive to anybody. So maybe that's. I mean, honestly, I don't know anybody who's going to buy a Cleveland Guardians jersey. Maybe I'm wrong, but we
don't play Columbus Day matinee. Maybe.
Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, I like that. The Cleveland that should have been changed.
That was obvious. I mean, that
was on same thing with the Braves.
Yeah.
But I have a bizarre tale of showing what a nerd I was when I was young. But the weather, when they do the weather on the hour, and they do it that rapid fire way that they do it, that we're all accustomed to tuning our ears so we can pick up what's going on. And when I was young, I heard them talk about patchy fog. And I thought, listening to it, that it was a patchy fog. And I was I don't know how old I was, but I'd say 10, 11 maybe. So I kept hearing a patchy fog. And, I would read a lot of books about, cavalry fighting and so forth. And I'm trying to think, what is a patchy fog? I've never seen that in any books. And I remember actually asking,
it sounds like something, though, Kevin. It does sound like something. It's like
patchy fog, like that.
Patchy fog on the land.
Yeah, and she just started laughing. It's not a patchy fog. They're talking about patchy fog. Patchy fog. There's no A in front of that. You can't imagine feeling more stupid than I did at that.
I believe me. I personally can imagine that, but because I feel it, I just every day. Here's something that's really interesting, and I do want to talk about the Red Wings in a second, Kevin, because they are something right now too. But the RIA Sports Today is reporting that there's a strong possibility that Evgeny Kuznetsov's 4-year ban will be lifted, and he'll be able to participate in the upcoming Olympics. The Russian Hockey Federation is actively working on this, apparently. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of crazy if this is the case.
Well, he won't be playing for Russia. He'll be playing for the Russian Olympic Committee or whatever.
Right. But did they say what he actually did to get back in their good graces, or they just feel like it because the roster's short? This is how arbitrary it is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, okay, if this does happen, this is a sign that the IIHF and the IOC are, let's just say, compromised. I won't drop the W word. They're compromised.
Corrupt.
That they're corrupt. Thank you very much. That's a clean way of saying it. Because honestly, if this guy was banned for 4 years because he was doing illicit drugs, and now all of a sudden he's cleaner than Caesar's wife, I have a problem with that. And because we were talking about, who's the number 2 center for Russia if they in the Olympics if Kuznetsov isn't there, and we're talking about Vadim Shipachyov or Nemestikov. I mean, that really hurts the Russians, but that shouldn't matter if his ban was valid, which it is.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, the whole thing is kind of nonsensical anyway, for the fact that they're banned as a country for doping, and yet they're still playing under the banner of Russian Olympic Committee. I mean, it's
he's playing for a team that's not
Olympic Athletes for Russia, OAR.
Yes, I know.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that was what it was in 2018. That's they won.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but they changed it last time to the Russian.
I know. And by the way, along these lines, you guys did see that Marc-Andre Fleury did introduce a new Native American hockey mask, like a mask that actually was designed by a Native American. It's really cool. So I'm trying to get a picture of it, but someone just texted me that. So yeah, there's can we talk about Marc-Andre Fleury for a second?
Sure.
Marc-Andre Fleury, has there ever been a better trade deadline possibility than this? This feels like, the absolute best possible.
Yeah, as long as he's still playing well, yeah. He's
still playing at all. Because you can write off the whole freaking season playing the Blackhawks with him. You know what he can do. You know what he can do in the playoffs. You know what he does under pressure. So
Right.
like the reality is,
well,
this is a great possibility.
well, Kev, I'll say this: the Blackhawks are going to have to hire their general manager well in advance of the trade deadline and I think Fleury is probably the main reason, and maybe even Taves and Kane. But with Taves and Kane, I think those are more off-season moves because their cap hits are so big. But they can retain 50% of his $7 million salary, and there are contenders out there, Edmonton, that could use a goaltender. But for a veteran GM, you better get a significant asset or two from the Oilers or from a team that is contending for the Stanley Cup for Fleury. Otherwise, you're not doing your job. And that's why I think they have to get, instead of having the interim GM, who I'm not casting aspersions on him, but if you're going to bring in a GM, or a Ray Shero or Jim Rutherford or whoever, it better be before the trade deadline.
Don't you think this is pretty formulaic, though? That it's a first round pick, a second round pick, and prospect.
It is. I just think the amount of teams that could be involved in this, and like the possibility of getting somebody who really.
I don't know. Give me 5 teams. I mean, everybody's pretty set. I mean, Edmonton, obviously, for sure.
Edmonton, Boston, maybe, because I don't think Swayman and
Luka Rask is going to be back.
We don't know, right?
You never know with Colorado if they're not happy with
Campbell goes down in Toronto. I mean, listen. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of possibilities.
Washington.
If it starts,
I think there might be 3 or 4 at most.
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 is fair.
You're not going to have 10 teams.
No.
Competing for him.
No, that's right. That's right.
No, but if you're in the top 10 teams in the NHL, Marc-Andre Fleury could be the best.
But I mean, you're not going to change your goalie unless you're desperate. So
no, yeah, for sure.
So I think it'll be
because you have to look past this year. If you have a goalie signed for 2-3 more years, and you bring in Fleury and you say, okay, go win a championship, what's the other guy going to be like for you next year? Like, that's not an easy transition.
And
and the one thing I always remember too, it was Jimmy Rutherford actually that schooled me on this, and I knew this, but he put it in a way that I realize now what he was trying to say, or not now. I realized at the time, but he always said, we always talk about your prorating salary so you could squeeze that guy in, but all you still have to change. It's still dollar per dollar on the cap yet. Right. So even though you're saying, okay, yeah, we're only trying to find room for $1.8 million, but you're still trying to it's a $7 million player for a $7 million player that has to come out. So, it's still hard to bring in a $7 million player.
And that's why the whole Eichel thing, and not to go back in this, but that's why when he came out today and says, well, ideally I'd like to be back in 3 months. I mean, again, dream on, but when it comes time, they're going to have to clear $4 or $5 million off the cap.
Yeah.
There's no way around that.
I was going to bring up today that I saw yesterday again that Kelly McCrimmon said is our intention is to try to bring him back during the season. But what nobody is saying, I watched them play last night. I don't know if anybody else did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're not a good team.
They are not.
Not with the injury.
Seattle might be better than them right now, which is kind of crazy. Like, right? I'm not saying because the players out right now. Seattle's a better.
Well, they got shut out by the Leafs earlier last week, and Mike Zeisberger from NHL.com aptly called them the Henderson Silver Knights instead of the Vegas Golden Knights, which I think was right on. Then they go on and they beat Ottawa, and I think then they beat Montreal, who's one of the worst teams in the league right now, the way they're playing, and then they lose to Detroit, and not only lose to Detroit, lose to Detroit on the second of back-to-back, Kev, when they had come back and beat Buffalo, I think on Saturday. So it was a tired Detroit team, and they lost 5-2 to Detroit.
Yeah. I tell you the one thing that bothered me watching that team, and whatever it is, that they had in their first season and for their first 2 or 3 seasons that made them so special, they don't have that in anymore. I'm not, and obviously there's, they were not a star-driven team when they started out, and now they really are because they've lost Pacioretty and Stone, and they really are star-driven. And when those stars are out, suddenly they don't look the same. Like the Golden Knights, they really had some cohesiveness that I'm sure Gallant played a role in that.
Yeah, he did, and they played fast. They played a certain system, and they just were they were riding emotion all the time, and now that emotion is just
even the Kraken don't have that same emotion, so that's true too.
That's right. Yeah,
we haven't seen that kind of emotion very often. I mean,
yeah, and the Kraken, to quote the great Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
They can't score.
They
don't really have the. So.
I mean, they've got good defense and they've got good defenders, like we thought they would. But some of them are hurt too. Like Alexia is a big player for them, and he's not in there all the time. I wanted to show you guys something that I was struck, and I'm watching the game the other night, Flyers Capitals game. I put this out on Twitter and I put it out on Instagram too. Ovechkin's defensive play of what I'm going to call the defensive play of the year. And I know you guys think I'm prone to hyperbole. I know once in a while.
No,
I'm going to call this, and the fact that it's Ovechkin, the fact that he does this on a power play when he's on the team so to set this up, the Capitals are on the power play. They're playing against the Flyers, and I'm gonna put it up here on the screen for you guys to see.
Mm-hmm.
And Cam Atkinson has been set out on a shorthanded breakaway. Okay, Cam Atkinson's not a slow guy at all.
No,
fast player for sure. So this is the play, Ovechkin's at the bottom of the screen now. Ovechkin makes this play. So this is Ovechkin chasing down Cam Atkinson, who's a fast player. Ovechkin's 36 years old. Chases him down, gets around him, gets to just the puck, and slams into the boards. And without taking a penalty or anything like that. I mean, this is the guy who's chasing Wayne Gretzky's record. And everyone's saying, don't get hurt, Ovechkin, because if you get hurt, you'll never catch his. I mean, what the heck? I mean,
this is the best defensive play I've seen in years, but that doesn't give him Gretzky's record.
No, it doesn't give him. But I don't care about that. But I'm not talking about Gretzky. I'm talking about Ovechkin as a person and as a player.
He's a great player.
Why you should love this guy is that he's willing to
talk about this play all week. It's amazing.
He's willing to do this. He's willing to do this. Despite the fact that he's chasing that record, and despite the fact that people say if you get hurt, you'll never catch it. You know what I mean? He tries to stop Cam Atkinson on a break, on a single shorthanded breakaway. And
he's got the angle on him though, right here. You do have to admit that.
In watching this,
if you look at him, he's angling toward him.
Like players on this play would try to hook him right there, and he doesn't. He goes around him.
No, it's a great play.
What I'm surprised at, and watching this now on a loop 10 times, is I'm surprised that he didn't dive to knock the puck off of his stick, because that he crossed across his path and beat him on the other side. That's what makes it so amazing.
That's the incredible moment, because he now granted, Atkinson is struggling with the puck. If you watch, he is definitely not getting it cleanly. He's battling a little bit.
It's rolling a little bit.
But the fact that Ovechkin doesn't hook him or try to pull him down or anything like that, and instead he's like, we're going to stay on this power play. I'm just knocking this puck away, which is what he does. And Atkinson doesn't even think he's there. Atkinson has no idea this is happening.
Look at the power in his strides. Look at it again. Watch him chop. He's really digging in there.
He's really digging in, and it's and he's 36 years old. And it's this is just the passion to just play the game. To me, this is a love of the game play. It's
he's always had that.
Yeah.
But I think now he's at that. Lemieux came back to play ostensibly because his son was old enough to appreciate that he could play.
Yeah.
And I do think that Ovechkin's son, and the fact that he now can recognize what's happening is motivating Ovechkin. I agree with you though. His passion has always been there.
It always has, yeah.
And I wonder too if we're seeing a softening of his image because of that child. We're seeing.
I always felt like this is the same image, Kev. I think they just didn't do a good enough job covering him over the years. He always has been like this. He shoveled people's driveways. We've talked about him.
I'm not talking about from his perspective. I'm talking about from the fan basis.
Oh, from the fan base.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's all. This is the same guy he was, but
I
think you're starting to see fans react to him.
Well,
what is Alex Ovechkin in a universe where Sidney Crosby doesn't exist? Like, I think you have to ask yourself that. Like,
go ahead, Mike. I want to hear what
I think that the softening of his image started after they won the cup in 2018, when they spotted him with the cup. What was it in the upper deck at the Nationals game? Like he was he was partying around with it. But it extends to like the Mass Mutual commercial with him and
that's a good one.
But I just sense fans are starting to, because I've always said that we will love Ovechkin greater when he's retired. I think he'll be one of those guys that people will be telling folks, I remember going to games and watching Ovechkin. What an incredible player. Where they don't say that now. And X point about Crosby, I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. I go into a wireless store and the guy sees that I work for USA Today, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm the hockey writer." This was, probably 7 years ago. And he goes, "Oh," he says, "you must hate Sidney Crosby." And I said, "No, I actually like him quite a bit." And I said, "I've been covering him since he was 16. I went to Rimouski. I know him pretty well." And the guy, all of a sudden, he goes, "I'm from Washington." And the whole tenor, even though he was working at a store in Michigan, the whole tenor of my experience there changed as soon as I acknowledged. And he didn't say a word for me. And then right out of the blue, he bolts. He goes, "Do you ever look at advanced stats?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do. I do look at them."
This is my job.
And like, he just couldn't get over that I found anything redeeming about Sidney Crosby. And it's when I really sort of had an understanding of the phenomena that Eck was speaking of. Where it's one or the other.
It is.
Yeah, you can't love them both. And to be honest with you, I do love them both. I enjoy watching both of them play. I don't know Ovi as well as I know Crosby, but I know him.
Yeah.
I've done enough interviews with him. I think he'd have a hard time putting my name to here, but I think he knows I belong. If I went up to him, he'd say, "Well, this guy's interviewed me before." So
I mean, I just think that. How much would he be loved if Crosby didn't exist? Like, just nothing against Crosby though, but just like if he had been the only player from that particular, like if he had been the only guy.
I think if he were on a different team, like I think, the Penguins are a national, they're Yankee-like.
Yes.
There's a national following for the Penguins. When I was at USA Today, our number one team in terms of readership that drew stories was always Penguins. Penguins were number one.
Right.
People pay attention to them, and the Capitals were always not nearly as high.
And I also want to say this. I think Crosby helped Ovechkin get popular and stay on the map, because in the first couple of years of Ovechkin, even at the draft, there wasn't great interest in him. There was talk, "Hey, he's a great player." But people weren't writing a lot about him, and they weren't talking to him much. But the whole Pittsburgh-Washington rivalry helped Ovechkin.
But we're overlooking something. We're overlooking the Russian factor. I mean,
I think that's even bigger than him being on the bench. Like, I think you're right. I think if Ovechkin's Canadian, that's another.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a no-brainer.
I think the first 5 or 6 years of his career, everybody looked, "Oh, he's amazing," but it was that like in Canada, it was the anti-Russian thing, not the anti but just like of course they're pro-Canadian.
I just think it's pro-Canadian. I don't think it's anti-Russian. I think it's just like I think it's the pro. I think it's just like Crosby's our guy. Crosby's the Canadian. Crosby's the guy. And it makes nothing against Crosby at all.
But I also think,
but Crosby's not universally loved either, which I've never understood.
Right.
There's a lot of Crosby bands.
Well, I also don't know though.
There is.
Had Ovechkin gone to a team like the Atlanta Thrashers, what would people be thinking of him in his first couple of years? Because as an example, like at the draft, Ted Leonsis learned Russian so he could speak to Alex Ovechkin because he knew he was going to draft him.
Right.
Not every owner was going to go and do that for even your number one overall pick. Yeah. And that's a big deal. And again, if he went to the wrong team, it would have taken him longer to get popular. He still would have come through.
We saw Ovechkin go to the Atlanta Thrashers in Kovalchuk. I mean, we really did. Like, to me, that is, because I'm not saying Kovalchuk's at Ovechkin's level, because Kovalchuk's was a hell of a player when he was young.
He was, but he would have been much bigger if he was in Montreal his whole career.
Well, and I think some of the thing with Crosby and to a lesser extent McDavid is they don't really have like bubbly ebullient personalities, and I think that media wants these players to be, like happy-go-lucky and great interviews. And Crosby's not he's a good guy. He's not a great interview, and neither is McDavid.
No, that's why Gretzky and Howe, are on a pedestal. It's because both those people were tremendous mediagenic people. I also think Gretzky has helped Ovechkin considerably by going on the record that he hopes Ovechkin, because that would have been big if Wayne had said, "Boy, I hate to see my record fall. It's going to be a sad day."
That is like the Pope saying contraception's okay, Kevin. I mean,
you're absolutely right. In the hockey world, that's the
only you could make that analogy there.
It's 100% true, though. Wayne's saying that.
No, you can do that, Mike. That would be a good ballpark too. You could make that.
Yeah,
there's another factor here too.
I was scared about saying it, so that means it was definitely more along your lines, Mike.
There's another factor here too, Ak. Hold on. The public persona or how fans felt about Ovechkin definitely got boosted when they won the Stanley Cup. When the Capitals won theStanley Cup and he had that 8-day week where he was drunk every day, that really helped everybody like him.
You're right. By Instagram too, because people people just sending in their own videos of him. They seeing him just in a fountain in downtown. With drunk in a fountain with a Stanley Cup or whatever.
He was at the upper deck at the Washington Nationals game, sitting in the upper deck with the cup next to him.
I mean, Silver Springs, is that the town down there? Silver Springs,
Maryland. Yeah.
Remember him walking through the Silver Springs Mall or whatever it is. It's just like, holy cow, because I've been to the mall. There's a Borders bookstore.
He brought the cup
to
the people.
It didn't help him to that, and Mike always brings it up, and this is an accurate assessment. The league has looked the other way for what has been dirty play on his part, and he's a 240-pound man who runs you over.
But what we saw in that play, that's competitiveness. I mean,
he's a unique, player. Like Crosby has, he's hard to play against because he's hard to play against, but he's not a 240-pound guy. So
no. And but I never saw Mario or Wayne chase somebody down like that on that play we just watched.
But I've seen Messier do it. I've seen some other players like that.
Speaking of that, with the Gretzky and Mario, I believe it was Dave Molinari who was the great writer for the Pittsburgh newspaper, a Hall of Fame writer.
Yeah, he's still out there.
Yeah, he still is. But now he works for the private. No, he's not with the Athletic. He's with the other private.
DK.
DK, that's right. And he once said about, I believe it was him, I hope I'm right on this, that Wayne Gretzky wants to be on Saturday Night Live and Mario Lemieux wants to sit on his couch and watch it.
There you go.
And perfect. that is a real good summary of their personalities.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this is a good question asked by Alexander. Do you believe Gretzky really wants to see his record broken? Because he says, I don't think so.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but that point is a really good one. He may not.
Yeah.
But the fact that he said it, I think helps Ovechkin.
I'll tell you why I think he's okay with it. Having been around him just a little bit and getting to see his personality. He's always been an ambassador for the game. He's always wanted the game to advance.
I think it's a pay it forward because we remember what Gordie Howe was like when and we remember what Phil Esposito was when he broke the single goal record. And I was here it was in Buffalo. They were both extremely gracious, and I think he's just paying it forward because
it's not like Ricky Henderson holding up the bag when he broke the stolen base.
I'm the greatest of all time.
Two things here.
Yeah.
One, Gretzky's greatness is not dependent on that record.
No.
He knows it. He knows it.
He's Wayne Gretzky.
He knows that. Like he's the great one.
Yeah.
So he can afford to be gracious in that regard. So maybe he doesn't care. I mean, I just don't know. But and the other point is when he was very, very young, and I did lots of Gretzky stories in the 80s.
Yeah.
Walter Gretzky, the late Walter Gretzky, and Wayne talked about this all the time. Walter drilled it into Wayne's head. you give back to this game.
Yes.
Yeah.
This game is going to be good to you. You give back.
Yeah.
And Walter was so important to Wayne that I think
he invited in all the kids from the neighborhood. I know someone that lives in that neighborhood. They'd all go into the house. They'd all get to see the memorabilia. They'd all get an autograph of Wayne.
So, this graciousness is real with this family. So he may believe that, but I you bring the viewer that brought that up. That's perfectly legitimate. You got it. You don't know, but
you don't really know. I mean, to me, like he always had. I mean, he was such a great goal scorer, and yet goal scoring wasn't even what we considered.
Oh yeah, well,
great.
What made Wayne great too, and when Wayne had 5 goals, he wanted 6.
Yeah, right.
And when he had 6, he wanted 7.
He never took it easy on
I was talking to Bernie Nichols for this book that I'm doing with him. And he told me that just the greatest story is like when Bernie would get 3 goals in a game or 4, when he get back to Venice, the first thing Wayne would say is, "Bernie, you got to get 5."
Right.
Yeah, don't settle.
Right.
And when Bernie said that's where he realized, that's one of the keys to Wayne's greatness is he was never satisfied. He always wanted more.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that, what's really interesting about the game, I've never really thought about that until the way you put it just now, is like the difference in that how athletes have changed and how they think about things. Because I think the modern athlete, until Connor McDavid now basically has been like, I'm not going to rub it in the other team. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit there and score 5 times. If I've already scored 4, I'm going to pass it off. We're going to, like when we play soccer, you got to, when you run and you play youth soccer, you're running up the score on another team. You work out ways to not do that. You work out ways not to run the score up. And I always remember when Jágr came into Philly, he was with Giroux and Voracek, who were scoring points, but weren't scoring like the kind of points they would eventually score. Jágr would say, this is the deal. Like he would say, you play it, you keep going. Like Jágr convinced them to not let up. Like you keep playing because Jágr had an era of people scoring 150 points. So he's like, you're going to keep doing that. And that was something that Giroux, and I remember talking to Giroux, and he's like, yeah, I'm always surprised. Like he gets a couple goals, and he's like, yeah, we're going to double that now or whatever. It's just not something that I don't think the modern athlete maybe is taught.
Well, it's less true now, but when Igor Larionov was in the NHL, and he came late, obviously. Mm-hmm. I had talked to him at length about the Russian mentality of playing hockey, and Igor, and he said Sergei Fedorov was like this too. He was one of the last of that kind of era. He had to defect in order to come over.
Right.
And he said the Russian way of playing is when you get the lead, you shut it down.
Right,
so he said, I don't think a Russian's ever going to win the scoring championship in the NHL because, they get a 3-2 lead or 2-1 lead. They're playing very defensive.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to get another goal. They're trying to hold that 1-goal lead. Now, I'm not sure the modern Russian players like that, but that's how it was.
What's interesting about that, and you bring that up, when I think of Gretzky's goals that he scored in his career and Ovechkin's goals that he scored in his career, there were a lot of the Oilers beat teams 8-2 and 7-1 and 6-0.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the Capitals doing that. Like I feel like the Capitals, were Ovechkin's goals were often really in the heart of the competitive part of the game.
They're 2 completely different eras. We're talking about when a guy like Pat LaFontaine scores 160 points and he's not even in the top 3 in scoring that year, like 93. I just at that point, the Oilers were so much more ahead, and we're talking a decade before that, but we're so much further ahead of so many teams in terms of their speed and their offensive creativity that they couldn't help not scoring 8 goals.
Right. That's true. But they did run it up. The Oilers ran up.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, it wasn't quite as politically incorrect as it is today. Like I think about, say, Will Chamberlain's record. If someone tried to do that today, there would be columnists galore talking about, that it was a parlor trick. And
so it's what makes Ovechkin's record to me so much more impressive. The fact that Ovechkin's doing what he's doing so much more impressive in a lot of ways. Beyond the era, beyond the fact that Ovechkin did it when people were in clutching and grabbing was still happening. Ovechkin started right, but I mean, obviously Ovechkin was benefited by starting after the 2-line pass was eliminated. I mean, can you imagine that Oilers team without a 2-line pass? I mean, that would be just like that would be just insane. But there's a lot of different things obviously went through that era. But yeah, oh my gosh, it's crazy. Before we get out of here real quick, I do want to talk about the Red Wings because I did watch that game and just a couple of games lately. And what's going on, Kevin? They seem like are they ahead of schedule or is it me or what?
Well, they're two players are ahead of schedule for sure. Seider and Raymond are.
Yeah.
My good friend Bob Duff, he and I talked about this story and we decided he was going to write it. But the difference is Holland draft picks versus Steve Eisman draft picks.
Interesting.
Since Steve Eisman took over, his top 2 draft picks are Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond. You can make a argument that both of them are the best players from their draft.
You can.
And he's got them, and they got a guy coming next year.
Yeah.
Erlandson, who could also at least has a chance to be the best player from that draft.
Not the best defenseman from that draft. It's like
yeah, for sure. And he's a big guy, and he's playing really well, playing 25 minutes per game. Like he could end up being just like Seider was, the best defenseman in Sweden. So that's been the difference. They've been a little more competitive. They went through a tough spell. Tyler Bertuzzi is playing out of his mind. Like he is playing really, really well. If you look back to last season when he got 5 goals in 9 games and then got hurt and couldn't play anymore.
Right.
He has 13. Let's see here. No, 13 or 14 goals in his last 19 games, something like that. He's played very, very well. And they draw a lot of energy from him. Last night, and we all know the story. He's the only guy non-vaccinated in the league. And last night, Dylan Larkin, who's missed 3 games for personal reasons, and then came back and played and was very emotional when he said his family's gone through a lot. We still don't know what it was all about, but everyone seems to be respecting that he doesn't want to talk about it. But he said last night that I'm really proud of Tyler Bertuzzi.
Wow.
And people think that his teammates are mad at him because, he can't play in Canada. But
I could make the case that they would have won the game in Toronto had Bertuzzi played because they lost 5-4. 14 goals, 8 assists in his last 19 games. That's
pretty good. Yeah, and he really is a fire starter, and he really is a rock on which the foundation of their attack, the energy, and the irony of the fact that he hasn't taken the vaccine is he is the guy that looks out after his teammates. He's first in line whenever there's trouble. If there's trouble on the ice, Tyler Bertuzzi is right at the front of the line saying, "What's going on here, boys?"
He's fun to watch. I mean, he's very electric on the ice.
Not a great skater, but he always seems to dig in and get to where he needs to be.
Yeah. I wanted to talk briefly 2 more things real quick. The one thing with the Carolina-Florida showdown on Saturday night was something to watch. And that, Carolina going for the 10-0 record, and which was tying the best NHL start ever. I really thought that Carolina was going to take this game because, I mean, the reality is, as good as Florida's been, Carolina owned Florida last year. Like they were in the same division, played 8 times. Carolina was 6-0-2 against Florida last year. And even though Florida finished first or whatever they finished second, right behind Carolina, I guess, in that division.
Carolina won. Florida and Tampa,
right,
were right behind them.
Right. So that was the only team that Florida had a losing record, and they really had a losing record. I mean, they didn't win them. 6-0-2. Carolina didn't lose in regulation, and yet Florida comes out, new coach and all. Puts up 4 goals before you can blink, jumps out of the field and just takes and runs away with it. I mean, the Panthers, it's just with Quenneville gone, not skipping a step. It's kind of insane.
They're a very good team. They've got all the components, including an aggressive general manager, and I think Renette has done a good job. And how
about Duclair with 8 goals? I mean, that's like
well, and they're. Barkov is injured, and it didn't seem to matter.
Barkov. I mean, granted, It was something else. And then finally, Mike, we got to talk about the 5-0 Toronto Maple Leafs, because I think it's what has changed. I mean, this team and still, even though they win, I still see they win the other night against Boston and give up 44 shots. Like it's just insane. Like how good Campbell is for them right now is just insane. And
I mean, ironically, they started winning when their core started scoring, which is what I said when they were losing 4 in a row. Matthews is not scoring, Tavares is not scoring, Marner's not scoring. Now Marner's
ironically, I don't think that's ironic.
Now Marner's got 12 points in his last 5 games. Gee, what a shock. So they're getting really good goaltending from Campbell, and they're going to have to get good goaltending from him, but because what a shock, Kev. Peter Mrazek is hurt.
Yeah.
My God. Who called that?
Yeah, you did.
They're gonna have to play the other guy too, right?
Well, it's probably going to be Michael Hutchinson, but they don't have a back-to-back until the weekend when they play.
He's not called up right now, right? He's not their backup right now, though, is he?
No, right now Joseph Wall, the kid from the 2017 World Junior U.S. team, is the backup. But I think it's mostly because there's a number of days and a number of games that you can play a goaltender before he has to re-clear waivers. And I think what they're doing is they're making sure that they can milk Hutchinson and probably send him back down, call him back up when he needs to start, and they'll just use Wall as the backup. I think that's what's going on.
Hutchinson is a waiver. Hutchinson lives on waivers, though, doesn't he? I mean,
but he cleared waivers at the beginning of the year, and now he's got I think it's 28 days or 10 games that he doesn't have to clear waivers again. So they're going to milk that so they can keep him in the fold.
I say they go with the U.S. goalies. I mean, what the heck? Stay with Campbell, stay with Wall. These guys. I mean, it's the U.S. guy that's leading their team, and Matthews. I mean, this is what Toronto's always needed, more U.S. players, and I think that this is what's happening right now.
We'll see.
All right. That's all the time we have for today. And I'm going to just bring this up beforehand. Don't ever wear turtlenecks. Just I don't know when the last time you guys wore a turtleneck sweater. It's just not a lot of fun. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy.